The guy that actually started the whole thing that we understand as samuraiism, that is actually called Bushido, right? It's actually called Bushido. And he came later, but the guy that actually set up the whole Bushido clan, what we understand as shogun, what we understand as samurai and all that, that was actually a Moor. His name was Yamoto. His name was Sakanoye Yamoromato. He was a jet black Moor who descended from what they called the Kings of Heaven, which were the original members of the Xiang dynasty that were in ancient so-called feudal China under the auspices of the Tartarian or the Tatarian Empire. Okay? So everything that they say was made by somebody else was actually made by us, is what I'm starting to really understand. You know what I'm saying? And that's the sad part about it, is that everybody else be on some trying to act like they not that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, they're gonna do a movie about Sakoye because he's out there doing his whatever shit, but he wasn't the original. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't the original in that. The original in that, again, was Sakanoye Yamuramato, who, again, was the Moor, who was basically there from the beginning when they set it up. Okay? So there would be no samurai, there would be no shogun, there would be none of that if it wasn't for this Asiatic man named Sakanoye Yamuramato. You want to get more on him, get the book African Presence in Early Asia. He lived 250 years before the guy that they're calling the slave that this guy Chadwick Boseman is about to play in the movie. So of course they'll show you a nigga who came after and act like the yellow Japanese niggas was the ones that was putting him on, when really they all got put on by his ancestor. Okay? Anybody else have any other questions before we get into stuff? You know what I'm saying? The premise of bullfighting started after the Moors were deposed from Spain, but the bullfighting that we see is really a ritual. The whole act of bullfighting is actually a celebration of an ancient deity named Mithra. Mithra is depicted as a bull. Mithra is the god of the air. Mithra, the rite of the Mithraic rites started in a place called Jordan, and Mithra's colors are red, white, and blue. Excuse me, red, white, and black. This is why Michael Jordan, who played for the Bulls, last name was Jordan, who is the so-called air, right? God of the air, right? Whose team colors is red, black, and white. You understand? So he is the embodiment, or she was the embodiment of what Mithra was in terms of the spell that they were putting on black people. You understand? That's why everybody had to love Jordans. Because remember, the word Hebrew means to cross over the river Jordan. So Jordan is, again, connected to the original thing. That's why you got to be like Mike. You got to be like Mithra, because Mike is Mithra. Michra. right? Just like Mithra, Mitrah, right? Yeah, God. So his airness, meaning air, remember Lucifer is also the god of the air. This is why Michael Jordan ain't never do nothing for no black people. You understand? He only there to support his handlers because he was groomed to be that. Because his family is from North Carolina. His family is actually Siskiyou. The Siskiyou people today are called the Tar Heels, right? Wasn't that the name of the team that he played for? The Tar Heels are also called the Blackfoot. Okay, so the Siskiyou, who are the Tar Heels, who are the Blackfoot, are the guys that they basically was following after. These are Moors. These are Moorish people. Okay, their national tribal name is Siskiyou. Their public corporate name is Tar Heel. Okay, but if you're saying Tar Heel, you're saying Blackfoot. You understand? You see how easy it goes? Just like when you say Tartary, you're saying black man. Because what color is tar? Tar ain't yellow. Tar ain't white. You understand? So this lecture is called, or this dissertation, this class is called the Snapture. Thanos was actually right. Okay? And what this basically is, or what I want to kind of get into this one thing, is why we Moors are so dejected. And it's really because we occupy the highest levels of authoritative society, both what they say above the table and under the table. Okay? Only problem is most of the people in our era, especially people, I'm 46, so most niggas in my era are sold out. Mostly all of the friends that I came up with back in the days, all these niggas are sold out. Okay? But that was because that's what they ancestrally have always done. You understand? Remember, the devil don't pick enemies from you that are new to you. He picks the generational enemies because he don't have that many people down with him. So what he got to do is keep as many people up under him as possible. So he uses ages from a generational perspective. So if your grandfather was a snitch, that means that the father's going to be urged to be a snitch. The son going to have to be a snitch. Everybody going to have to be a snitch in the line. You understand? But remember, a snitch is somebody who is a civilian that's not really involved with the everyday whatever situation that's going on between whatever societies is banging back and forth with each other. So the old lady that's out there watching niggas sell drugs and then call the police on them, she's not a snitch because she's not in the game. You understand? The black woman who was walking down the street and then she saw somebody get popped. And she saw somebody get popped and the dude run away. She saw the nigga face. If she dropped dime on him, she's not snitching. Because she's the civilian. Civilians can't be snitches. Oh yeah, we're going to get into that, Mo. We're going to get into that. That's why I'm bringing all of this up. See, you swift. When I say hot table, you know what I'm talking about. Because I definitely peeped that. And we definitely going to get into that. But specifically, that's what's going on. So we need to understand what a snitch is. We need to understand that when black people or black men or civilians basically tell on people that's doing crime or doing shit in the community and they're not involved with it, they can't be listed as snitches. Technically, they can't even really be informants. They can only be informants if they're working with the man. So if they're just seeing a crime and they a victim of a crime and they reporting a crime and they come and testify against you and shit, they not snitching. You know what I'm saying? Like they doing what they supposed to do because they're civilians. They can't be involved in whatever it is. They wasn't involved. Same thing when it comes to the Moors. Same thing when it comes to the Moors. Like when you're a Moorish American or you're a Moor, whether you're in a temple or not, when it comes to whatever, even if we don't agree eye to eye with each other, if that Moor is in distress, you're supposed to help him based upon we all supposed to follow the divine creed. Because there's rules to shit. Just as they say in that movie. There's rules to shit. And if you don't follow the rules, then we fall into anarchy, right? Anarchy is another form of governance, though. That's what we also have to understand. People think anarchy is like, oh, everybody just going crazy. Yeah, to a degree, but for the most part, anarchy just basically means that nobody is in control of the government. Okay? And that's technically what's going on right now. They have made us turn against our own people, but we don't understand who our people are. So instead of trying to go through all of that, let's just define and go back as to the essence as what it is. So the reason why I'm talking about using Thanos as a explicative or a representation of this, because we have to understand that the concept of Thanos is older than Thanos itself. Thanos, right, comes from the Greek word thanatos. Okay, thanatos in the ancient Greek or in the so-called Greek, but see, we don't even want to use that term. Thanatos actually is a Minoan word or an ancient Etruscan word. We got to go by what the people was when they was actually there, right? Not what the interloper or what the enemy calls them. Okay. So when we speak of Thanos, we're speaking of the ancient Greek term thanatos. Okay, and thanatos is the essence of death. Now, for those people that saw the movie, y'all saw the movie. How many? Everybody saw the movie, right? Now, okay. Those people that did see the movie, if you want to see it for free, go to a site called 353. I'm talking about Avengers Endgame, as well as the movie Parabellum, John Wick. Go to a site called Online 353 TV, online353.com. Now, the thing is, when you go on this site and you click on to see the movies, all of these fake sites is going to pop up. So as soon as them joints pop up, shut them down. And then keep going back to the original link. Once you set the link up, it should come up. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. But you got to shut down the other fake links so that it'll like open up windows and shit in your computer. Just keep shutting them down and then finally click on it. You'll see the whole movie. So Thanatos, again, means death, basically. But in the movie, for those people that saw it, when you saw everybody get snapped away, right? You saw them get snapped away. But being snapped away didn't mean that they was dead. You understand? Technically, in the movie, you didn't see him kill anybody. You just saw him displace everyone. You saw him turn everybody to dust. But if they were really dead, then they wouldn't be able to come back. So that means actually he displaced them. He put everybody, 50% of the universe, somewhere else. Okay? Now, this whole concept of population control and all of that is the underlying theme in this thing, and that is being fostered under this thing they call Agenda 21. So there's a thing in Georgia called the Georgia Guidestones, where the so-called Illuminati people set up a whole situation and basically listed that they want to basically reduce the world population to only 500 million. So if there's 100 million, then that means they want to reduce it by half. See what I'm saying? Who that sound like? That sound like a man. But the problem with that is this. The birth rate of white America or Caucasian people, or what we perceive Caucasian people to be, is zero at the point. Is zero. So what they have to do now, because of the plummeting birth rates, this means that based upon that, remember, Caucasian people only represent a little less than 11% of the population. So being that they're listed as the majority, they're listed as the majority so long as they are the majority of people in the federal government. Okay? They're no longer that. If they say 2050, then they really talking about 2020, 2025, 2030. So in that, Thanos represents that ancient form or that ancient aspect of the so-called black man, the archetypical black man that cannot be reasoned with. He represents that old Moorish empire, or that old, or that coming judgment that is inevitable for the unrighteous. The unrighteous meaning anybody that is basically living a hybridized form of life, which basically represents the Avengers, because they are all basically augmented. You understand? So he actually is bringing the balance. He actually did it. So what they had to do was find a way to go back and go into an alternate state and bring the people from that alternate state back to the primary state. But it did not undo what he already did. You understand? So really, we're talking about the proverbial changing. The allegory in that is the proverbial changing of the guard, the proverbial aspect of us waking up to the idea that we are our ancestors' return. We are the vengeance of Allah. We are the who avenges the unrighteous. We are the meek that will inherit the earth. You understand? This concept was venerated by people like Adolf Hitler and the Thule Society in something they refer to as the Order of the Black Sun. The so-called Wolfenstaufen, the ones who were actually following the esoteric lines along that, which said that the original man was going to eventually take over. And so they needed to get rid of all of the ones who was going to stop or try to impair that ascension, which is basically why the so-called Khazarian Jews wind up being put into the camps, as they say. Okay? So there was a method to the madness, and in that, the plan that the so-called Nazis have for them, those so-called Jews are now implementing on all of Goyim in Israel as well as over here. Okay? So in essence, when we talk about the Snapture, we're talking about the coming of the plasmasphere. Thanatos, the death of the infidel, represents then the coming of the plasmasphere. When the sun goes into a plasma ultraviolet state. I don't think that we've experienced that in our lifetime, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to. This plasmasphere, this plasma state is based or becomes activated into or through the filaments that exist within the 7 C's. The 7 C's of the body represent the filaments of the etheric body that we refer to as the chakra system. See? And as you can see, red is always at the bottom. So whenever you see them giving you a rainbow image with the red at the top, they're putting the root chakra at the top, which means that it's a satanic symbol. It has nothing to do with the chakra system, the 7 C's, or the evolution of you as a decent ethereal being. It's about keeping you locked down into this density through sex, through illicit deviant sex. Islam? Because what they're trying to do the same thing that Thanos did in the movie. They're just doing it through illicit means, through subversion and coercion. They're doing this. They're getting you to snap yourself out of reality by giving them more life, by interbreeding more with them than you do your own people. But the concept again of a Thanos, right, can be related to the two systems, what they call an anode system, ANODE system, or a cathode system, CATHODE, both represented by the extremes of Cain and Abel. So as I told you, Michael Jordan, we just went through how he is really a manifestation of the god, of the ancient god Mithra, right? This concept of Thanos is really the concept of you, of the actual photosphere, the plasmasphere coming back online and burning up anybody that's not in their particular thing, in their particular natural state, under their own vine and fig tree. Anybody trying to be something else other than themselves, anyone living in a lie, anyone putting artificial things in their bodies, things like that. This type of sun burns that all up and you basically turn to dust. So this is the concept. This is where the Infinity Gauntlet comes from, because the Infinity Gauntlet itself that we see in the comic books is actually a symbol of what's his name? King James. Okay. Now this hand that they base the Infinity Gauntlet on comes from the Cathedral of Saint Teresa in España, aka Spain. So they want you to believe that this is a female's hand. But the females that's in the class right now, hold your hand up and look. Does your finger come this low next to your middle finger? Look at your hand right now. Look at your finger and see how close that finger is to your middle finger. That means that you're a woman. This right here, this can't be a woman if the hand placement is like that. That means this is a man's hand, correct? Men, look at your finger. Is this finger the same size as your middle finger? This is why they took anatomy, biology, all of that out of the schools, because they don't want you to know what real human beings look like. So what I'm showing you right here is a man's hand. This is actually allegedly the story the elder I got from the elders in my research. This is actually King James' hand they cut off. And they cut it off because he basically was able to get the Bible out in the reversion of the Geneva Bible out, which was the reversion of the ancient text they got out of Granada after the fall. And so to punish him, they cut the hand off the same way what's his name hand was cut off in the movie. See what I'm saying? So Darth Vader, Thanos, Darkseid, Terex, Mumra, Skeletor, right? All of these Lex Luthor, Black Manta, all of these represent the ultra masculine black man who is in his archetype, who is not trying to maintain the status quo. Understand? Who is trying to evolve this thing regardless to whether people want it evolved or not. Who does that sound like? The people who would not convert to Christianity, who would not ally themselves with the present false timeline. Who does that sound like? Sounds like us right now, exactly. So in this, these jewels represent, and the gold represent the breastplate that was worn by the Levite priests. In order for you to handle the ark of the covenant, right? You had to be a Levite priest in the Aaronic brotherhood. And they were a division of the high priests of Anu. And we know that the high priests of Anu in ancient Igupata, what we call Egypt, were called what? According to the hieroglyph. We talked about it in class before. What were the high priests? They were called the Moors, right? Maurs, which was the Phoenician spelling because it was the old Punic Latin way of saying it, correct? Exactly. So the high priests of Anu were the priesthood that were actually really running these places that we call that. And they, a division of them after the reconstruction where the Hebrews basically took over from the Canaanites specifically, they adopted the technology and was able to get the stones and create the breastplate. Look, here you go. The breastplate that would then act as the positive ion charge that would then activate the technology that was in the ark that allowed them to do away with the giants such as Raphi, who in the Avengers movie they refer to him as Laufey, who was Loki's father. So this has everything to do with us and nothing to do with them. So in that Thanos representing the Maw, representing the plasma sphere, representing the old Moorish Empire, looking to do things over and put us back on the real history, knew that he had to get rid of 50% of the population to do so, because that 50% represent the 85, right, and the 10% that's out there blood sucking the poor and trying to kill the 5%. Yeah. So this is the Jew. This is where they're getting it from. But they only gave you what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They only gave you the first 6. They ain't let you know about the other one because it's actually 2 gloves. It's actually 2 gauntlets. 6 on one hand, 6 on the other. But we didn't wear them as gauntlets. We wore them as breastplates. Each representing one of the tribes. Exactly. Exactly. Okay? So this is all reminiscent to the coming energy that we as Moorish people represent. This is also seen in the movie that's out now. They call John Wick Parabellum. Parabellum is a Latin word, right? And it means to, in absence of peace, prepare for war. Okay? The term, the fact that they even use it in the Latin really lets you know or shows you how much they're focusing on the Moorish thing, because the only people that speak Latin besides us is the Vatican, and they speak a form of Latin which is Vulgo, what they call Vulgate Latin, which is basically Pig Latin. It's not even the real language that the people they stole it from were speaking, because those people speak a Moorish Punic, or what they call phonetic language, and they were that. In the movie John Wick 3, Parabellum, which means prepare for war, we can also see that the same vibratorial frequency that they're pumping through the end game thing is being reminiscent in that, because John Wick also represents that Freemason, I'm going to show a proof, that Freemason who was under the jurisdiction of the true Moors, who are now really coming back into power. And we can tell that by the color scheme. Look at the color scheme between this and the end game. Look, it's the same purple, yellow, gold, ultraviolet, because this is reminiscent of a nuclear explosion. It's also reminiscent of the activation of the so-called Hadron Collider, which is really just a physical version of the machine that you see in Endgame that allowed them to go back and forth through the so-called quantum sphere. But guess what? That machine is based on your pineal organ, working in conjunction with the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Our heart acts as the pumping mechanism that allows the vibratory frequency to constantly come ebb and flow, come in and out. So those of us that live a certain vibratory frequency, when the sun does go to this position in what they call Sauron, this is the eye of Sauron that you see in the movie Lord of the Rings. When the sun does go to this level, those of us that's basically on our deen and have been on it in our true, under our own vine and fig tree, we can only be amplified by this energy. You understand? This is the black hole sun. Anybody should get if you've never seen the song or heard the song, watch it with the video, Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, remember the video? The only people you see being sucked up into the black sun was the white people that was really demons on the inside. You ain't see no black people going up in it. Exactly. So that's the element of that. So I'm showing you elements of that. So within that movie, though, right, we find out there's an organization that we've been watching called the High Table. And the High Table is run by, the High Table basically is the so-called Illuminati, basically. You understand? And they have a secret world. And in that world, they exist under a certain protocol and ideology. That ideology is all based on old barbarous law. And it is based on the law of honor, chivalry, chastity, and fealty. Okay? This law was instituted by the Moors. The term the assassin comes from the word asash, right? Or asash, or asasha, or asashin means he who follows his faith. But it was corrupted eventually into hashamin or hashashin because this specific sect was a part of a division, the military aspect of a group called the Alumbrados. The Alumbrados was a group of Moors who, after in secret, maintained their nobility and wealth and lived as conversos in the so-called Spanish powers, and secretly funneled money to the Barbary powers to shut them down. So they were the original so-called Illuminati that Weishaupt and them based this whole thing on. They had a division in Damascus, again, in ancient Nabatea, is what Damascus used to be, or Persis. And they had a division in the mountains there. And the guy that ran that was called the Old Man of the Mountain. The Old Man in the Mountain was allegedly, as they say, legend has it that he was the brother of Salah ad-Din, peace be upon him. And he ran the whole thing. And he had it set up where they would kidnap boys of the enemy and bring them into this lush place that literally had honey and milk flowing and beautiful women and all of that, and basically geese them up and then let them know that they would, in order to come back here, they would have to fulfill whatever the Old Man in the Mountain told them to do. And then they would wake up back in their beds and didn't know. So this is the whole, what I'm talking to you about, the Hashim and all that, these are the ones that you see in the movie Assassin's Creed that was fighting to keep the knowledge from the Italians. These are the original Moors of this order. And they were the ones who basically schooled the Templars and created the whole real so-called Masonry thing to bring those that were under the corruption of the Venetian oligarchy, Christianity, Freemasonry, and bringing them back in. So these guys all followed this dude. So the Old Man in the Mountain was so powerful, and they started to make their money because once they got into order, they started taking the hashish. So they became known as Hashishim or Hashemite. But they, again, being the original Moors, descended from the original Moors that was from over here, maintained that extra power. And eventually they became the secret benefactors of Europe, working against the Venetian so-called oligarchy that was putting castrato and Mameluke Caucasians on the throne of the so-called Vatican because of the fact that the real Vatican moved to the east and put themselves under the original Ethiopian Empire, what they call Abyssinian Empire. So they used that time, the Venetian amalgamated conversos used that time to then buy up all the castratos from the Greater Moorish Empire, Tartary Empire, mind control them, put them in the throne of the Vatican, and then start to use them to dethrone us by proxy. That Venetian oligarchy family structure is what we call the Illuminati. But all them niggas is still by blood, oath, and all of that under the original flag of the Old Man, or the descendants of the Old Man in the Mountain. That's the Moors. So in this movie, John Wick, he winds up having to meet who sits above the high table. The high table, again, being the Illuminati. And this is who he met. This is he who sits above the high table. And what do these look like to you? And guess where he met him at? He had to meet him in Morocco. He had to go to Morocco, and he had to go into the temple, into the Continental. That's the name of the hotel. Wherever it's at, it's called the Continental. And everybody uses gold coins to do their business. And everybody has to use markers. If you say that you're going to do something, you put it on the silver marker in blood. Therefore, you got to fulfill it. If you don't fulfill it, then they get to take your head. That's old Barbary law. That's old Moorish law. That's Moorish Muslim customary law. That's not Sharia law. That's not any Arab law. That's in that. And before he met him, he had to walk across the desert. Come on, Moors. And then the first thing he said to him after he drank out of the cup, while he's on his knees, the more in the middle that you see here, he said, "My son, look how far you have been lost." Called him a Mason off front, and he was in the black and white suit. After walking across the hot Arabian desert into the caves of West Asia, passed out dead. The Moor was walking by, seen him. They put him on a camel, brought him back, woke up in the temple, and then before he left, he had to cut his finger off to show fealty to the Moor. That's the only way he could leave, because these are the people who run the high table on the low. So what does that say, Moor? These ain't no Arabs, because the dude that's you see in here in the middle, he's the guy who was wearing the fez in Wonder Woman. Because the whole thing took place in Morocco. Islam, he had to go to Morocco. He had to go to Casablanca. And there, the Moabites, Halle Berry, was running the hotel, the Continental. So he left New York, which is Brutium, right? And had to go to Morocco in the east to come back to the Morocco in the west with his freedom. Islam. So again, I'm showing and proving, because again, these ain't Arab. Arabs don't dress like this. These is Moors. This is in Morocco. So these is Moors. Look at the crescent. Look at the two camels in the back. Look at the hashish. I told you, the hookah. And look at the two Moors, the two sheiks on the side holding them down. This is why we Moors are at the top. It's why they hate. Because they're going to say, oh, well, they look like Arab. It don't matter what they look like. What was they dressed like? I'm showing prove again. Now, the word Barbary, right, comes from the different clans. You had the Bambara, the Berber, the Bahri, the Beya, the Bayanu, the Bedouin, right? And they had cousins further east who dwelt in a place called Benin that we now call Ghana. Understand? So we Moors, we're descended from those clans over here, because those are still considered ancient Riffian clans. Now, as the barbarous Moors, as they called us, right? As barbarous Moors, that means that we are of the barbarian powers or the barbarian powers. They say barbarians are evil, but everybody loved Conan, right? Ain't Conan a barbarian? Right? Everybody love He-Man, right? Ain't He-Man barbarian? But look how dark Conan and He-Man is. See what I'm saying? And even in the Conan movie, it showed you that the Moors was running that through the Temple of Set, the Naga, with James Earl Jones. And he had the straight black hair, like the Moors over here. You understand? The straight black hair was for the Moors over here, not the Moors over there. In Egypt, and what they call Egypt over there, they would shave their heads and then wear the wigs. But that was only after the war that turned all that place nuclear. That was the war with the Hyksos in them. That's what turned most of that into the desert. Understand? So, have you ever... So, look at this. First, on the right-hand side, get this book, Indian Slavery in Colonial America. Just flip Indian for more, and you'll see exactly what I'm saying. Look at these tribes. So-called tribes, right? Look, Algonquin. Now, Algonquin, again, is called Asani. Ottawa is Ottoman, okay? Potawatomi is Potawatomi. Potawatomi, okay? Chicopoo, Illinois is Illinois, okay? Ojibwa, Chippewa, all of these, Lake Superior, all of this, Lake Huron, all of this. Look, so all of these are Moors, right? All of these are so-called Indians, right? But look what they call them. The distribution of the barbarous tribes east of the Mississippi. So that's it, Moors. Like, what else they gonna say? I'm showing and proving to you that the so-called Indians they talking about, they already done listed them as barbarous, meaning that they Moors. So what are they talking about? That when they got maps, when they got barbarous maps, maps of the barbarous tribes of the east of the Mississippi, meaning that these was the ones that were specifically in there. And look, all of these are the tribes that had the initial treaties with the so-called colonial powers, right? Right? So this is backed up in this book. When we talk about these so-called Patuan and all these people, these are Moors, these are Muslims that was dealing with whatever tribal connection they was dealing with. But essentially, they were still part of the Greater Moorish Empire, which is because all of this was still connected to Grenada, which again was over here. How can we prove that? Well, let's see. Let's go first. Here go the pyramid they found over in over there. While y'all doing the knowledge to that, let me get this out. Let's see. No, of course not. Let's see if I get in here. Anybody have any questions while we going through this? Oh, I'm trying to find this. And then boom, this is the that one was in Morocco. This one let me get this. This was the old capital we had in Chicago that they blew up. I'm looking for this other joint. Just give me a second. They blew that up. So there's all of this references to us in our original capacity and stuff, but we can't occupy that if we're focused on the fake narrative. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Yep. But when we say Egyptian, right, with that's different than Mizraic. Mizraimic. Mizraimic is really what we should be calling it. Here go another castle over here. This is all of this is over. This is over here. The stuff I'm showing. Mizraimic, because that's the people of Mizraim. Mizraim is Missouri, Mississippi, all of that. And so because we can prove that Grenada is over here, I don't know what these Negroes is talking about in terms of us not being from over here. If I'm showing you a map, okay, on your right is the barbarous map, right? The map of the barbarous states of Moors and their clans. Okay. And then over here is the Viceroyalty of Grenada. Here in what today would be, this is when Guyana was further in, and I guess not an island. You know what I'm saying? And then all of this Venezuela, this is where all the oil in the world come from. The greatest oil reserve in the world is right here in Venezuela. That's why Venezuela going through what they're going through. That's why Venezuela get more money than all the African nations combined. So this give the Chinese the reason to really be up in there and hold it down, just in case the United States go buck. And then you got Colombia, where all the cocaine come from, right? And then you got Brazil, and then you got Ecuador. And then through there, you get the Panama Canal, which, as you can see, was already there. This is going back to the late 1400s. The Panama Canal is already there. So I don't know what they was digging out. They was digging out maybe another part of it, but it was already there. So what I'm showing and proving to you and the world is the barbarous Moors, right? The barbarians, right? The Barbaries, the Tartarians, the Tatarians, the Tamoancan, as they're also called, the Monacans, the Monacan Empire, as it was also called, the Amaraca, right? The Maracas, right? This is the Almaracas, like this is us. This is where Granada fell. So yeah, we had the dominion over there in Hispania, but that was also just based on what we had over here. And that was peopled by the peoples of the north, of the southern tribes east of the Mississippi, and had the connection through ancient. Because all of this up in here, when we get into further up into Mexico, we get into La Venta and Veracruz and Palenque and all of the places that the so-called Olmec, who eventually went further up into this part of the Mississippi, into Louisiana and all that, and set up the Washoe, right? Who then were connected to the so-called French Acadian Nova Scotians that came over and eventually grouped together into what became the Haitians and the Cajuns. But the Haitians was too, you couldn't control them. So they was banished to Hades. You see? To Hades. Under Pluto. That's why they got the Haitians like that. But they forced the Haitians to get into the fake Christianity thing and abandon their empire. You see? And then through Napoleon, the Corsican, self-hating Moor, then grouped up with again the so-called high table, aka the banking families, who was amalgamated at this time, right? But was bleaching ever so often, while at the same time pledging fealty to the greater to us. See what I'm saying? So by the time the Barbary Wars came, we had to grip up. And so the descendants of the Caucasoids and these people decided that now that the Moors had been deposed and the world ended in 1492, that now the Venetian oligarchy could use the crusade system to then further cement the destruction of the Moorish Empire through the Society of Jesus that we call Catholic Society. While at the same time, this so-called Catholic Society is still paying money and fealty to the greater Moorish Empire. You see what I'm saying? They buying themselves time while at the same time selling us out. Buying time, selling us out. Buying time, selling us out. Just like you seen in that movie. But regardless to whoever was what or whatever was happening, you see who was in control. So that's the sign for us to always remember. So in us, when you seen them with the scissors, like I said, you seeing them use the see. Okay, we're gonna look at something real quick. In the movie Us, you see them in the red jumpsuits because the red jumpsuit represent the red flag or the scissor betrothed by the red. The scissor symbolically in the Bible has its own representation, which we'll dig in a second. But this flag specifically is another one of them flags they don't want you to do the knowledge to, because that's connected to this. You see, it's the same shape because this is the Osiris. This is them fighting back. This also represents X, but X in Roman numerals represent 10. So this represents the 10 tribes. Excuse me. This represents the cipher or the completion of the original tribes that was fighting against them, which was, again, the mechanic core, the core of the mechanics, which is why the mechanic order is real big in the West Indies, because those that after the war of Reconstruction, they shipped them out into the West Indies to build up the infrastructure out there and then put the Africans on their land or occupy their land for themselves. So in that, see, you got black land, Shiloh. Shiloh is in the Bible. Chickamauga, the Chickamauga is connected to the Chitimacha, and the Chitimacha are connected to the Amaraka, and the Amaraka or the Maracas are connected to the Moors down here, connected to these Moors down here in Brazil. Okay, the ancient ones. That was part of the Tamuancan Empire, which was also connected to the Aztec Empire. Get the book African Presence in Early America. Again, to verify things I'm talking about, get the book Primitive African Nations. Get the book Golden Trade of the Moors. You get into all of that. So this flag that you see right here, like I said, is the actual rebel flag. This banner right here is really ours. That's why they ain't had no problem getting rid of it, because it actually belongs to the black people. But the black people don't understand the context by which this was the flag by which we all unified against the invaders, the descendants of the Portuguese, Spanish, Castrado Catholics, and Congolese that came over here to take the land between the years of the 1811 and the so-called 1811 and 1881. That happened. They decided to launch their attack during what they called the New Madrid earthquake that happened in the year 1811, the year before the War of 1812. You see? And what we understand as the Civil War and what we understand as the American Revolution, that's all coming to us from the perspective of those who rewrote the history to hide the fact that they actually were the interlopers, and that the African slaves that were on the plantations were actually the descendants of those who invaded us on behalf of those Christians. That's why they were so miseducated and all that, because we let them language with no education, just like we put all the white indentured servants up on the plantations. And so the banker castrato Venetian niggas wanted to use them the same way they used the castratos in Rome to basically give them our land in return for killing and taking it from us. And so the Emancipation Proclamation had to be put out so that way they could free their African Masonic castrato or whatever brothers who was languishing on the plantations that was working for the so-called Southern aristocracy. The Southern aristocracy was the Moors. Get the book Black Masters, White Slaves. Get the book Black Confederates. Get the book The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War. That's what really happened. And so after we finally lost from our position, they then allowed the Mongolian through the Confiscation Act, through the Indian Removal Act, through what became the Indian Citizenship Act, through the establishment of the Dawes Rolls. They used all of that to give the Mongolian strain Indians who agreed to eventually bleach themselves out the right to be federally recognized, which would then give them a subsidy, and in return they would basically work with the white man to basically keep us from the resources of the land, because now we would be designated as Negroes and we're now chattel property. So the flag with the scissors goes back again to us enslaving them and putting them under the generation population control system, basically the SNAP or the SNP, that allowed us to shut down their genetic process and reproduce, which is what bred the insanity and homosexuality in them, because they had been descended from those deviants who were descended from those slaves who practiced the ancient carnal ways of Babylon through the mysteries of the Areopagite, and were banished to Mount Areopagus. And so the Areopagites created what they called the Midsummer Night's Dreams, where they would come and dress as Pan and do all of these fake things for the regular people, do pageants, get money, but they weren't allowed to be amongst regular society and all that. They were always banished back to the caves, to the mountains. That's why all of their gods always deal with them, Prometheus and these people being grown up in caves. When you get the book by Plato, read Plato's The Cave and these type of books, they always basically talk about the same thing, them being banished and them being put in holes and shit. So they, because they were descended from those ancient pre-flood peoples who were descended from Ralphie and those giants that were in the decadent ways of eating people and burning babies and all that type of stuff, and they kept it going. So because they weren't considered male or female, they had no rights in any society they were in. So their goal was to corrupt that. So we was knocked down with that, and we would kidnap them, gild them, and then force them to then live under civilization. And then eventually they would go and bring their people back and do the same thing. These became the Days, these became the Mamelukes, these became the freebooters or the buccaneers, and these people became the descendants of the people like Paul Revere and these type of people. And because they were weak and because they were basically castratos and stuff themselves, we respected their valor and gave them certain responsibilities. And because they proved themselves more than the shiftless niggas that we was around at the time who was basically living off their luxury, they were given more responsibility. But secretly, they were setting up their own deal, just like what happened in the movie where the Freemason who runs the Continental wound up switching it up on John and trying to kill him. See? So what we are living in right now is the spiritual revival of the Moorish Empire and the cutting off, the snipping or the snapping or the snapture before the rapture, where all of this stuff actually happens in real time. So they're preparing us for these things with these little subtle aspects of it and creating movies by depicting what's happening, the duality between us, again, juxtaposed to the United States. We are reliving what we already did, because the We are the infinity gauntlet. The gauntlet, the hand in spirituality and occultism, represents the penis. Understand? So this also represents the 5 fingers or the 5 hands of the abyss. This represents, again, the jewel that brought things into existence, which is why it's coming to pass right now. But like I also showed you, it represents that which is of the ancient Levite. So this is all of Morris science. This don't got nothing to do with Hebrews. This don't got nothing to do with none of that. That's just how it was translated by those people who became stateless. The Hebrews became stateless because they honored not the law by which the Lord gave them, and therefore they were strucken out. They were cut off. You understand? Not because I say it, that's what they Bibles tell them. They Bibles say that. And this is from 1 Kings 7:50, and the cups and the scissors and the basins and the spoons and the fire trays, all of gold, and of the pins on which the doors were turned, the doors of the inner house, the most holy place, and the doors of the temple, all of gold. From 2 Kings, but the money was not used for making silver cups or scissors, right? Or basins, or wind instruments, or any vessels of gold in the silver, but for the house of the Lord. See how it moves up the position of the scissors. The pots and the spades and the scissors for the lights and the spoons and all of the brass vessels used in the Lord's house, they took away. See that? What happened in the movie? The people from Us, they were taken away, right? They were put at the bottom, right? They were cut off, right? When the scissor is up like this is an occult meaning. When it stands straight up, it represents vengeance. It's not being used. You see? But look right here. This is the Lucifer horns for the satanic people. See, it's messages for them, but it's messages for us too. Everybody be like, oh, well, this place wasn't called Morocco because this one called it Turtle Island. Yes, that's what his clan called it in his language. But he or whoever that wasn't the only language they were speaking here. The only reason why you don't have people speaking Latin and all that the way we used to is because they killed all of us that did that. Because those of us that did that spoke it looked like us. Pardon the pun. So essentially, again, I'm showing and proving. The scissors also represent, again, that which is cut, that which is always by the basin. Okay? Because the scissors have to be present in the temple of God for the cleaving. That's why this was the symbol that the Moors used that was flying from the flag. So when the crackers saw this coming on the shore, they went crazy. That's why when they saw this, they went crazy because they knew. These is the ones that defeated us in 1864. Get the book Slave Revolt in Bahia and Brazil, and it says that we basically shut them down through the Seminole War and all of that up until 1864. So if that was the case, then where was this Civil War they talking about where they was killing all these white people? Those was all the white people that we owned or was fighting for us. Jefferson Davis and them was occupying the office that was being paid for by the Southern aristocracy. That Southern aristocracy was connected by these Moors from these clans that were technologically advanced. Look, these niggas had cannons. You understand? And had their own diplomatic relationships outside of the United States that had nothing to do with the Northern Moors, who was now in cahoots with these people. So in that, the Buffalo Soldiers and these people was actually traitors. They actually was fighting against their own people. Which may explain why Bob Marley bigged them up, because Bob Marley is a Breakspear. And the Breakspears was one of the Italian, Venetian, oligarchical, Illuminati, blood-drinking piece of shit families that's destroying the world right now. But I'm in the movie. Now, the wild stuff is I'm in the movie, and when it got to this part, because now I'm like, wow, he walking across the hot Arabian desert. They really going in on the ritual. In the movie, I'm thinking this while I'm watching it, right? Then when he get to this part, I'm watching it, and I look over. These crackers is the white people on this side of me is looking at me kind of wild, and then the other way, and I realize, oh, I'm wearing the same thing on my head that this nigga got on, that all these niggas got on in the movie. More, and they peeping it in the dark. In the dark, they peeping game. Where I'm so in the movie, like, wow. Then I'm like, wow, yeah, this is what's going on, more. This is what it is. This is why they trying to really get people to not really do the Nostradamus. They getting dirty moors out there to throw dirt on their own name to get little pieces of crumbs and stuff. But it's not gonna work. Just stay on your dean and keep away from all the nonsense, and you're gonna be straight. Regardless to what these niggas say and do, they know they can't. When I saw that, I was like, nah. Where else? So look, this is the first a painting of the first cathedral built in Rome. On your left. On your right, these are instances of white slaves in what they call Greece and Egypt doing all the work, getting sacrificed and everything. All right. This is the first cathedral library, whatever they built in Rome that led to the establishment of what became St. Peter's and all of that, which was peopled by Moors up until Constantine. And then when Constantine moved the empire to Macedon and then switched from Latin to Macedonian Greek and / Amharic, he basically was trying to bring it back in conjunction with the Ethiopian doctrine, because Ethiopia, through the Piso-Ethiopian dynasties, they are the ones that supplanted the original Ethiopians, the original Liabellans, the Turkana people, and them, the real dark Ethiopians that they don't really talk to you about. They use them as a means to supplant them and then move the capital to Axum in ancient times. And then throughout the years, fostered religious rebellions throughout history to destabilize the greater pre-Islamic empires that eventually coalesced as Islamic empires. Okay. So when you talk about Muhammad, and they say that there's a story going around that Muhammad was actually a Jesuit and that Islam was started by the Vatican. That's half true in the sense that some of the education, remember, he didn't know how to read, but that didn't mean he didn't know what words meant. And the way that the Jesuits would give education, they was the ones giving bread and food, and his people was basically starving. His father's people was the ones with the money, but his father wasn't with his mother at the time or whatever, so he just basically lived how he lived, peace be upon him. Long story short, by the time he got into power, the goal was they was going to bring it back into Rome, and then he flipped it and, went on his own thing, and they couldn't really stop it. So whatever little influence they wanted to have in the beginning, because the Jesuits were controlling the flow of information between states, and certain states they were forbidden to have commerce with, or they'd be killed, because everybody knew they was the devil. So those states that did business with them usually was connected to them by blood somehow, and that blood went all the way back to Ethiopia. So the very first church, or Roman church or whatever, that was built there was built by the Amoritic Ethiopian dynasty that supplanted the Liabellan Ethiopian dynasty in Axum, and then built this here in Rome. So all of that decadence that eventually became what we understand as the Roman state and all that came through the Ethiopian influence that was always creating and supplanting the original Ethiopia stuff to supplant their needs to support their agenda. Because technically they go back to the people who was worshiping cows and drinking cows' asses and things like that. They're really like Hindus on the low. But eventually, a lot of the original Ethiopian tribes throughout the centuries of fighting eventually married into them to bring peace and all of that. So this is where a lot of them, the Muslims that was in Ethiopia, converted to Christianity. But generationally now, and by the time Mussolini came, Remember, if this happened in Italy, this is now Mussolini coming back now from Italy now to lay claim to Ethiopia as being basically a son of Ethiopia. Really, this is what's going on. And when you look at the colors that Mussolini's flag, as we described, it was also the same colors as the Seminole flag. So when we talk about slavery, the reason why black people could never be slaves is because we are not genetically, or could ever genetically be misclassified as Slovenian people, because we do not have Slovenian, Slovakian, Circassian, Tamahuan, RH rhesus monkey DNA. We do not have that. We also do not have the DNA that the Africans have directly, because the Africans' DNA is theirs and theirs alone. But theirs is also genetically connected to whatever modifications their customs went into generationally by having dealings with nations other than their own, such as Europe and things like that. Okay? Portuguese say that when they got there in the Congo, the Congolese and them was dealing with the homosexuality and they stopped it. Now that could be colonial lies, but at the same time, if they're willing to butcher their own people the way that they do, the same thing with our people here. If we're willing to butcher our people the way that we do, then why would we be considered a part of the human family? We're now the slaves who are more barbarous than us now, practicing the stuff that we used to do to them on us. And we can't really say nothing, and there's no remedy because we haven't acknowledged our position in it. We still trying to play the victim and shit. We can't be the victim and the ruler at the same time. You can't say that you descended from kings and then say that you was enslaved. You can't say that because kings don't get enslaved. Kings get dethroned. Kings get kidnapped. What is it going to be? You can't say that you were descended from you can't say that you descended from a slave and then say that your ancestors was kings. Which one is it? You sound stupid. You know what I'm saying? So again, I'm not hating. I'm just clarifying. This is why we can't lump ourselves into words like African, even though Africa or African is a Latin word. That's a word that we Moors use to describe a satellite, a throne dominion in our kingdom. That's why all of the kingdoms in Africa that we used or we dealt with always in the coast. Because we're a trading people. We're a people that deal with all people. And those people benefited from dealing with us. So the goal now is to make us believe that we're all different and that we don't have any connection to any of this stuff. But we can prove that we've been a part of an imperial state that goes back to pre-ancient times. And that what they are considering the world as it was then, we are dealing with the world as how it has always been for us. So just because you call that place Japan doesn't mean I call it that. I call it Nihon. The Japanese don't even call it that now. Everybody want to big up China, and China, like China's communist. China is killing Muslims right now, and the Muslims in Saudi Arabia is down with it. So if you're not a Muslim and during Ramadan now protesting that, and you still trying to go to Mecca and you still trying to do all of that, like that's hypocritical to me. That's like me saying, oh, Moors is whacking this and that. I'm a Moor, how great Moors are, but I'm not trying to deal with any Moors at all. I'm gonna just be on an island. Like that don't make sense. So look, this proved that we have been a state, that the first Christian church in the world, in America, was built 1,500 years ago. And it was built by North African Moors of the Moroccan Brotherhood. And they were directly connected to the ancient Phoenician Brotherhood or Hannibalian connection through Phoenicia, because this was part of Morocco through the annexation of the Bornstone by Hannibal Bay. That once you get a proper DNA analysis, you can now use in corroboration with that test to prove legal dominion. That predates America, that predates every Indian tribe that you could bring. Because there was no, and we are the Indians. These Negroes, any Negroes coming out dissing Moors or saying that you can't be Moors and Moors didn't have this, they all agents. Because I'm showing and proving to you who the barbarous people was. All the people that got the treaties with these white people, that's Indians, all them treaties got abandoned. All the treaties that's with Moors, they're multinational treaties. So you could act like the white man could act publicly like this shit ain't real, but he ain't gonna do that. He don't never do that. He could have his opinion about it all he want. Internationally, it still has merit once your status is proper. Period. And can no Negro and nobody under nobody else's jurisdiction can actually bring standing in a cause or a case like that. And that's the issue. That's why they don't like us. Because we go back to stuff like this. These are not Indians. These are Moors of the Sid Empire. What they call the Chandragupta. Get the book, Ancient Presence and African Presence in Early Asia. And notice the color. Notice the color in the back. See what I'm saying? Do the knowledge. Look at the Moor. Look how he's sitting. Look at the position. Right? What does that remind you of? Right. Purple. But then, look. One second. So look how he sent it. You got the Moor in the middle with the shield, right? Right? The black shield. Right? All got beards. Exactly, Moor. All got beards, but again, if they're from Africa, if they're from India, what Indian people, what African niggas you know with beards, heavy beards like that? Only the very dark ones that have descendants from the Chandragupta, the Mauryan, the any of those type of dynasties, and those are the Dravidians, and those are the ones that's basically under the same fake white yoke that we under. They got them under the thing. Those are the direct descendants from the Tamil, and they're also the Tamil. They're also descendants of the Jawara, or what they call the Sentinelese, the ones that's on the island, the original Indians and stuff. But this is them. But look at the joint. Look at the canopy. What that reminds you of? This. Look. Look more. From the same area. Because remember, China was part of Persia, which was Persis, which was the Moorish Mughal Empire, basically up until it was claimed by Genghis. This is the movie that's out now, John Wick. This is who sits above the high table. This is who sits above the Illuminati. So this is either a symbolic representation of us, because this ain't the Saudi niggas. Like, don't think these is Arab niggas, because Arab niggas, they not really on it like this. When you see the movie, they're dressed as Moors. They're not dressed as Arabs. And they have Moorish architecture around them, not Persian, not thing. It's specifically Moorish, especially the design of the hookah and all that. And so what I'm saying is this takes place in Morocco. Morocco, he came from Morocco, the continental Morocco from America, went to Morocco in so-called Africa, the continental, then went back to America, a free man under the jurisdiction directly of he who sits above the so-called Illuminati. Therefore, this either means there's a sect of Moors above all of these niggas, right? All that sect of Moors is us. And I think it's the latter based upon things like this. You know what I'm saying? So symbolically, theoretically, whatever we want to say, essentially, it's always busting down to what or whatever we don't know about ourselves. So like I said, this is Queen Victoria's brother. This is the Prince, Crown Prince, Prince Julian Talano Il of the Mahalika clan, Lord of the Mahalika clan, who basically is the true possessors of all of the gold hoard that's going on and the scrambling these crackers is doing now that we're reaching the time they got to give it up. So, like I said, symbolically, the snap or the coming of that snap represents them trying to desperately get rid of as many of us as possible before they have to be forced back to the caves and all that. So this is how far they're going. There's whole sects of them that really are trying to live a bastardized version of Moorish culture. You understand? Yes, to all of that. I really went into that in the last like two tapes on YouTube, Barbary and Tartary specifically, the square earth and things like that. But to give a quick overview of it, we got to look at the world from the perspective of how our ancestors looked at it. Quick. On your right, a brother, somebody sent this to me from a brother on Instagram, I believe it is, named More Aboriginal. He put this up. On the left, I've had this for a while, but I don't know who created this graph, but they're pretty accurate to the description of how it is in the Circle 7 and all that. So when you read the Circle 7, Dominions of Egypt, it says that the pharaohs that the Moors as the pharaohs of Egypt. Now we know that the term pharaoh is a modern term, and that was a term that the prophet used at the time because that's the closest thing people always understood Egypt from the perspective of the Bible, not from the perspective of a archaeological supposition. You understand? You got to think about it. Yes, in a war bonnet. Thank you, Mo. When you think about it from that perspective, you know what I'm saying? So when you think about things from the whole, back then people looked at everything from a biblical and narrative position. Baptismal records are still lawful records to be used to prove things about an identity and things like that, as well as religious faith or ascendancy. So essentially, we come from the time of what they call Pangea. So according to their history, that goes back to 339 million years or 338 million years. Okay. So from that perspective, this being a graph of Pangea, or the closest graph we may could get to it, this would explain that. So when it reads in the Circle 7 that the Moors, after they were displaced from Canaan, after the thing that happened with Joshua, that's in the book of Kings, that's in the book of Joshua, that's in the book of all that. This is the time when the Moors of ancient Canaan are working with the so-called Hebrews that dwelt in Canaan and Moab who was against the deviants in Canaan and Moab, who themselves were giants or whatever, who weren't down with the status quo, which was the humongous ones basically terrorizing and doing all the crazy stuff Allah didn't want them to do. So for whatever reason, they were shut down, and Joshua and them was given the technology, the Infinity Gauntlet, if you want to call it that, and whatever else they used to basically start shutting them down. So as they were doing that, they would run into Canaanite and Moabite tribes that wasn't down with all that. And because they wasn't down with how it was going down, they agreed that they would fight alongside and convert. So in Deuteronomy 29:10, for those people that read the Bible, you can read where it basically talks about the covenant between these Moabites, Canaanites, and all of that. So based on the destruction and the taking of their lands, they went to, by these Hebrew peoples or whatever, they went to them and asked them, the lords of that place, for the right to set up kingdoms and dominions in the northeast, southwest Asia, which on the maps or whatever would be over here. You understand? So I'm gonna show you while I get these. Here's that. So that was a giant picture. That was a picture like no human being built this. This is probably a petrified giant that basically set on the stone. And this is after the destruction where they start moving in. You see, that's why there's nothing there. You see how the roads is clean? It's like it's just all just made. You see how this is broken up at the top? See how the technology is broke? Human being, this ain't a sculpture. Is what I'm saying. So this ain't no sculpture. So we went and started taking all of these ancient places from them. You understand? Because we were that. So in that, you had instances where we still huge, but we not as huge as all of these people. We like this. You know what I'm saying? So we hook up with the ones that's willing to be right and give respect to Allah. And we work and shut all the rest of them down. And from there, take over those old kingdoms and all of that, and then start to create the new world. But we get to a point where some of us get tired, and then we start grafting. We start working with the slaves of these things, which is the Neanderthals, the RH rhesus monkeys, the what they call the big billies. Let me see if I got a picture of one. So yeah, here go one. These things. So these things get put basically in the same level as the lepers and as the grafted so-called black people who were now like albino or suffering from the leprous disease of what we would today call vitiligo or whatever you want to call it. So you have the ancient Moors inhabit, you see, living this life like here go the fez, here go the tassel in the front, here go the turban wrapped around it, here go his braids under that. Simple. He even got a chin strap with it. You know what I'm saying? So when we look at the time frame that this allegedly is happening, it says that they asked for permission to come to northwest, southwest, you see, from the east. You see? Because this is where all of the thing went down. All of this right here we call Europe, Asia. This back then was called Turin. This is where the ancient giants from here went and got the stones to come and build Egypt and all that under the king Shaddad, who was the lord of the Adite people, under the jurisdiction of the king they call Ymir, which the Egyptian theologists and fake archaeologists refer to as Narmer. Okay? You can go and look all that up. So that means when it said it came from the east, that means they're coming from all the way over here. You see what I'm saying? But over here used to meet. See how it meets together? The tip of this, you see, reaches the other side of this. So this right here, the Straits of Anan, as is written in the Bible, from the Anan kingdom and from what they call Prester John Anan, right? This is meeting. So the tip of Alaska hits Russia, and the bottom, and on the bottom side, the tip of South America hits China, or what we call Hawaii, or that whole chain that links us back up to the thing. You understand? So in the Bible, when it talks about the Straits of Anan, it's talking about the division between this part and the other part that we don't see, that we see on the other side of the map, over here. All of this over here reaches up over here and over here. You understand? Because it's one circular landmass. It's like this. This is actually the map. What we see as the legend or the map, this is how it is. So we're supposed to think of this on this surface. You understand? Not as going in a circle, but going in a spherical means on a plane. You understand? So it was nothing to go to Asia. It was nothing to go to Mississippi from Egypt. I just get in the Nile right here. I get in the boat and go right down here. Go from the Red Nile all the way through here, through West Africa, into the little Atlantis Ocean, boom, and right into the Blue Nile. And then go all the way down here and go all the way down here. You see what I'm saying? And that makes us Asiatic. You understand? When I got my DNA test, my stuff started from here. My ancient ancestors is from here, and it went all the way out like this. This is the map of the Underground Railroad. So you mean to tell me Ras Araminta, aka Harriet Tubman, was an enslaved African from Africa, and she knew the map to all of this under the ground? That's like me coming to your house right now and walking in and knowing where everything is at. That's like me coming to your crib right now and knowing where all your secret stuff is at. Know how to get to where all your stuff is. And I ain't never been there. Yeah, but remember, she might have been a fast learner, that's true. But remember, they didn't encourage niggas learning. Only thing they want niggas to do is learn to pick cotton, learn to serve the master, learn to be quiet, learn to bend over. That's it. So that couldn't have been it. She had to be from here. Which means if she was from here, that means they all was from here. Period. This is what your empire used to look like. This is what they want you to believe that they built all of this in a month, 2 months, and then 2 months or 3 months after destroyed all of it. No, they got white people. They shipped the white people in there. Look, this is the stuff that we have now. And now we're going to destroy it all and remake it. This is what Louisiana used to look like. Fifth Ward and all that. They demolished all of that to build projects. And then lied to everybody and told everybody that was just built whatever. Look, this them doing it. Just them doing it. Now the white people want to act like they was a part of the people that lived here before all of this. This was during and after the New Madrid earthquake. If you hear from this point, or when people start talking about the New Madrid earthquake, remember where you heard it first. It all started with that. And for the New Madrid earthquake, they used that as a means to build up a coup d'etat system of all of the Mamelukes under the Freemasonic so-called Illuminati banner that had infiltrated everybody and had went to destroy and usurp all of the black nobility that still was in Europe and replace them. And Hitler and them wasn't with it the way everybody else was with it, because his father was really Filipino, Moorish Filipino, and his father was a Moorish prince, and his father was the brother to Queen Victoria. Look it up. Look up the Talleno clan of Moros and the Maharlika clan. They don't ever show you these pictures. Who these dudes walking by the Nazis with the Moorish flag, their own Moorish flag, and black feathers on? What's up with that? They don't want you to know about that. So then the conspiracy was that they got Charlie Chaplin to do all of the speeches and all of that, acting like him. And then the real Hitler, the so-called Black Hitler, was the one that was really they was at war with. Because again, all the native people, all the original people up until the 1900s was Asiatic. These guys were not considered Indians. These people were seen as the enemy because they still knew how to speak the ancient languages and all of that. They are connected to these things. These things are called sprites. They exist in the upper atmosphere, and the Caucasians don't have no control over them. So every time since he started using a harp, they started popping up, but nobody talking about them. These are anomalies that manifest in the upper atmosphere and shut down everything that he's doing right now. It's real. Look it up. These are these gods. These are these things these are the Thanos things that's coming to get rid of them. When they talk about the cherry tree with George Washington and all of that, and they bring that up to you, that whole cherry tree story, remember, that's really about them being Mamelukes. The cherry tree is synonymous. Wait, where's it at? Everything is a symbol for something else. The cherry tree is symbolic of the hatchet, and the hatchet is symbolic of the flag, the scissors. And the scissors is symbolic to that which sits in the temple of God, ready to cut or smite or cut of whatever has to be. That's why in the movie, when you see John Wick, when he goes to do this dude, in order for him to live, he has to give up his ring finger, his married finger, which means he's marrying, which means when he cut it off to give the Moor the ring, that was him symbolically marrying himself back to the order. Which means that everything that went on in the movie was all to benefit these Moors. And we know they're Moors because this same dude is the dude that played in Wonder Woman with the fez on. The earthquake was called the New Madrid earthquake. That was in 1811. You see how they tell you about the War of 1812, but they don't talk to you about the War of 1811. Why is the New Madrid earthquake of 1811? Why? So when you read the book Slave Revolt and all that, you see that the American Revolution really started in 1500s and culminated with the white people coming into it in 1776. Because they were slaves of George and them. And George was a part of the Moorish Empire because he was the Sultan of Palestine and Rome, as was said by the Sultan of the time. See, you got the hatchet, right? You got the shaft, which is the penis, right? And you got the balls. See, he's getting ready to cut the cherries off. The cherries represent the testicles. You understand? This is the proof. This is what I'm showing you. This is what they're bonded under. Because this shield right here represents the patch that they would put on the area once they was gilded. That's the high masonry that they're not talking to people about, B. Yes, that's what caused all that. And while that was happening, they mobilized their forces to then start to take control of everything. And they created things like the Emancipation Proclamation to come and free the people that we had took control of back in the days and put on the plantations. The so-called black slaves, Negro slaves. They were under the jurisdiction of the aristocracy because way back in the days, in the 1500s, after the war, the Moors, again, from Granada, repelled the what you call it, Moors or whatever, the amalgamated Moors, the Portuguese and the Congolese that came on behalf of the Spanish, shut them down. See? Look at the turban. Look, shutting them down. And then we shipped the white ones up to the plantations in the north to run the tobacco. And we put the black ones on the plantation in the south. So by the time of what we call the Civil War, they basically got together and decided that they were going to work together to create a way to free their African enslaved Congolese slaves from us and then put them and us under the same jurisdiction and then give us their history. That's why you have to be African. And then they use the axe, like I said, to break everything down. This was, I forgot, I don't know who found this, but this is actually turned out to be true too. The oldest tribe of the U.S. with distinct traditions was the Alleghans. The Alleghans, right, which is like Afghan, the Alleghans originally have the born name Ali, 2 L's, which is also the born name of the king in the royal family of Hawaii, the Ali family. That's why you see him with the Islam fez on, king of Hawaii. And the Aleg, hence names of the Talawegi, the Chalagi, which is the Cherokee, and the Aligwe, and the Aligwe. Eventually, the Lenape. I return to this in chapter 6. The Mengwe Indians killed the Aligwe in large numbers. This diminished their population considerably. See? Always going at us. Sabatino and Moscati is very subtle in the inference he makes in his book, The World of the Phoenicians. The cover contains a lioness mauling the neck of an obvious African with curly hair. The Hittites forged alliances with Egypt after many years of warring and absorbed much of the ancient culture. See? That verifies what was written in the Circle 7, where it says that they asked permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to set up their own kingdoms. Islam, that's it. Therefore, we can't just be Cherokees. Cherokee is a derivation or a derivative of us being ancient Phoenicians. And the culmination of all of that, to just say what that is to just say Moors. We are the ones that basically brought everything and mapped everything up into the Great Wall. This is the bottom of the ice wall of Antarctica. Excuse me, what they call the Marmuto Sound. know what I'm saying? This whole oceans, aquifers, they act like the world is the population. They got to destroy it. No, what it is so much land that they can't control it all. New land is popping up out of the sea, out of mountains and stuff every day. Mountains is disappearing. They're not even talking about none of this. So, yeah, this is what's going on with all that. Anybody have any questions? Islam. Thank you, bro. So this is Muhammad II. This is why they don't want us really dealing with real Moorish custom. This is the law of the what they call the assassins and all that. This is really Moorish, how the Moors got down. These were all of the Mameluke days that had tried to overthrow the empire at the time that we had took over Jerusalem, took back Jerusalem again. This is why they don't want the Moors doing nothing. This is why they don't like you being Moors. You know what I'm saying? When the Sultan got there, the heads was already up. You understand? These was all Mamluks. This is why they had to stop us from being Moors again, because this was the natural state that they was in. Diplomatic relations between the United States and the Barbary powers. This is Sakanoye. I mean, this is Yasuke. This is the one they're going to do the movie about. He's the so-called slave. Whenever they use slave, this just means captured Moor. He's the captured Moor that becomes the head of the Bushido people again. But he's not the one that started it. But they jumped on his joint because they knew that in the movie they're going to make it like he didn't know that he was the real Moor. That it was started by somebody like him. They're going to make it like he was like an anomaly. But that's not how it happened in history. That's just how the white man and the Chinese man going to say it happened, because they know that they all recessed monkey. They came after. So this is the Thanos thing I'm talking about. Understand? On the left, this is the Thanos energy of the snap that is basically imminent for them. You know what I'm saying? It's the inevitability of what is to come is why it hasn't happened yet. Because they have to pay for destroying these things. We're supposed to be living in these things now. However, this was the destruction of us following behind them and not maintaining our customs and ways. This was the world that they came from. You know what I'm saying? They was just getting shipped out. They ain't know where they was going. You see? So eventually they made us pay for that. That makes more sense than them just coming into Africa and then every black person in the world that you see comes from them. That's not true. The term Africa, like I said, even when they're saying that, that's still an African word. So when they're saying Africa, they're saying more. Because the word Africa to describe it, they describe it as not even an African word. What tribe you know in Africa speak Latin right now? None of the Moroccans that's in Morocco right now, the corporation kingdom over there right now, speak any native Moroccan language, Moorish language, Mograbian language. To do that, they'd have to be speaking Latin like us. See, look, a free colored American. This is a picture of a free man, exclamation point. He is not an African, but one of those Americans called Africans. This is from the 1800s, man. Or either he is or his fathers were once slaves. You see? So the term slave cannot be applied to them. This is just a term they started using after Reconstruction. During Reconstruction, to me, started in 1811 and ended in 1881 with the Belgian Conference, with them now going and carving up Africa, bringing themselves into prominence by the 1900s. And now since the end of the 1900s, they've been in decline. Understand? If we're dealing with it from an imperial standpoint, if we're dealing with it from a perspective of a Negro or a citizen, then we're not looking at it from the perspective of what it really is. So it's really about whether or not we get to go back to being creditors and private citizens in this, or we're going to allow them to ourselves to continue to be handled. So anybody telling you that so when we speak of ancient Carthage or ancient Phoenicia or ancient anything, we're talking about the ancient Moabitic peoples or Canaanitic peoples that were absorbed and became so-called Hebrew Israelite-ish peoples. And then they both conjoined together and then created kingdoms of their own. And then some who kept the covenant lasted, and the ones that didn't. The last ones that kept the covenant in terms of a world power that did that was the Moors, who can trace their lines into all of this through the Canaanites and the Moabites, who, again, I already proved in Deuteronomy 29:10, where they dwelled in Moab. Not everybody could be dirty in Moab if they dwelt there, right? They had to have some shelter from people there. Same way, if I go to your city and everybody's dirty, that don't mean that when I'm chilling with you, you dirty. So when we talk about the ancient people in what we call, who became Genghis Khan and Attila and Tamerlane and the rest of these great genocidal maniacs who reshaped the Asian continent and eventually formed an invasion force and came over here, right? They can trace their ancestry back to the Cart Van Tartar, i.e. the Tartarians, who themselves were ancient Taurians, who themselves were ancient Thracians at one time and were ancient Scythians. These Scythians eventually became Mongols, and we know that they were Moors or black because they used picks. This is a pick from Scythia. And as you can see, there's a Moor in the back with a beard, and another Moor with a turban, and another Moor with a helmet. On your left is a picture of a imagining of Carthage, which, as you can see, has the same Tartarian architecture and everything that we're dealing with now, or that's the buzz on the internet now. But the Tartarian Empire was a Barbarian empire, and the barbarous empires were across the entire world, and they shared an architecture that was synonymous, and that architecture had a summit and climax in worldwide cultivation under the jurisdiction of the Moorish Empire, the true Moorish Empire, before its decline and into madness and decadence. But again, just because my father was a thief, or just because your father or our grandfather was involved in whatever they was involved, don't mean that we are that. Whether they promise us to that or not. We have the choice to understand what this is and use it for the betterment of ourselves, despite what everybody wanted not to be. So the more somebody tells you not to be something positive, the more negative they sound. It's that simple now. The more you see somebody parroting the story that the police say, that means that these people is working with the police, whether they realize it or not. Anybody who says that anything is not questionable is questionable. You know what I'm saying? I don't expect everybody to believe everything I'm saying. I'm researching, but I'm researching it from the perspective not that is true, that is not true. I'm trying to prove that this stuff is not real. And the more I'm trying to prove that, the more I'm seeing the opposite. You understand? Look, this is what they holding out on us. This is how they know who we are. How deep this was. This is how we used to live. before they got here. For the Africans, for the Russians, for everybody, for the Mongolians, for the Croatians, before everybody, when it was just us. This is how we used to be. Look the opulence. Look how he's balling out of control. Look. Look, it's digitized and you can still see. Look how we balling. Look. You don't see no white people, do you? The Moors. It's what they do. They destroy us and then create the little mockery images of how we used to be and hide it from us. So we never see. This is Freemasonry. So when you're a black Freemason, not a black Mason, but a black Freemason, you down, Aleister Crowley and George Bush, these people, that's your brothers. Your brothers is the ones hiding this from us. Trying to get you to become a woman. Put yourself under the sword, under the scissor. Look at the Asian Moors. Look at the Khan coming in from Asia. Look. Imagine if you had this. Imagine if we could just go and see this every day. You could just bring your children to see this every day. Imagine if your children grew up playing with stuff like this. No white people in it. This is by the same people that make the brooches and all that. We become a novelty. And our people help them do it. Look at the Sultan. You know what I'm saying? So as we close out, just to reiterate, so we fell again to the so-called Spanish, but when we talking about the Spanish, we talking about people that look like this. I'm talking about who they show us in Game of Thrones and all of these fake movies with the peons acting like real men when half of them are trans. Have the cast in Game of Thrones is trans, man. I haven't even watched the show, but I know. You could just see by the advertising and the people they got, they all trans. That's why it's hot. That's why they make it hot. They market it heavy. They want to make it normal, like it's okay. So we fell to people like this. This right here, this is Sancho. This is Sancho of Pampaloma. And he, again, was funded by the oligarchan dynasty, the people who paid for people like Newton and all of that to get into stuff, And they created the fake science that eventually led to stuff like the theory of relativity with Einstein, which we know is a prop. But what's funny is that at the same time that the Einstein principle that was happening, there was something called the Deutsch Principle. And the Deutsch Principle was brought out by a scientist named Deutsch that basically proposed the idea that what was left, that there was a such thing as Jewish science. And that Jewish science was limited in the capacity of it is because it's based on the concealment of what they're trying to keep from the Goyim. The black sun was not the enemy of the so-called black man. It was the Nazi government specifically that was trying to wage war against the Africans, specifically in Namibia, because they was trying to take their resources to do whatever they was trying to do. They was actually politicized against that because people they were down with, Japan and them, they was down with the black man through Ho Chi Minh and later Chiang Kai-shek and these people who study Garveyism. You understand? Mao was a Jesuit. That's why he killed all his people like that. Stalin was a Jesuit. That's why he killed all his people like that. Papa Doc was a Jesuit. That's why he killed all his people like that. You understand? But you had certain orders that was against that. So what we see as the symbol of the fascia, that was adopted, that was taken back by Mussolini and them to show force outside of the bankers' union that was basically developed from the oligarchy that they was trying to break away from, that so-called Axis powers, Japan, Italy, which was also Sicily, and whatever. And they was going directly at the source of the problem, which was Ethiopia, who was going through a succession problem because of the assassination of the real emperor to put Selassie in power. You can read about that in the book on Rasulullah and other books. And that's why you see Ethiopia was never invaded, because they had the ancient bloodline to go back to the original founders of those who gave harbor to the ancient bloodline Hyksos, who merged into what became the Ptolemaic family, and then merged out of that into the Piso families, and then from the Piso families married into the so-called other families to become so-called Semitic or so-called Jewish Khazarians, while the rest of the Caucasian people was locked up in the caves and being wild and savage and all that. That's why they don't like the Jews. But they bonded together because of the restrictions we put on them, and then work to eventually, get rid of the family. That's why you read stories like Merchant of Venice with Shylock and all of that, where all that comes in. But the Moorish Empire felt the Spanish people like this in 1492. This is the grandfather of Ferdinand. Understand? Great-grandfather. He grew up out the crib fighting Moors. Fighting to eat pork. While the Grand Duke in Russia, right here, St. Michael and them, he's fighting with the Moors against, and he's Christian. But they're in league with Byzantine or Pelagia, which is about to fall to Mohammed II, Lord or Sultan of Morocco, our descendant of our divine ruler in Morocco, of which we are the inheritors of that imperial doctrine. Understand? So I don't know what else. I think this is the same slide. I'm just trying to really impress that we did not fall to no Caucasian people until the end of the 1800s, because back then this is where they was up until the war, the New Madrid earthquake. And then after that, they rounded us up and fought back. And those of us that tried to fight back rallied behind our rebel cause and formed a confederacy of Cherokees and all of that against the Union that was agreeing to free the so-called slaves that we had imprisoned from the centuries before, from trying to come in here and shut everything down before. All of that was rewritten in history and put out in the version that we understand it to be today. Basically, that's basically what's going on. And nobody can really prove different. So when you claim an inferior title, then you're inferior. So if they want to be descendant of slave, or they want to be whatever they want to be, they can be that, but that doesn't mean that's what they are. But that's what they have made themselves at law. So you got to let them make themselves like that at law and not get caught up in trying to express to them the need to be opposite, because they want to be given something. This is the oldest icon of the Hebrews from the Minoan people. These are the Moors that went into so-called Crete and the Aegean Sea in the Peloponnesian area and founded what we brought the so-called Macedonians, Greek language and all of that. And then the ancient Hebrew stories was translated into Greek, and then they created secret societies where they took those stories and made them into myths and all of that. And then whatever. Okay? These are the founders of Scotland, Ireland, Britain, all of that. That's us. Because as you can see with the beards, they're from over here. That's it. So they can say what they want. They can act what they want. This is the ruler on your right. This is the crown of the Holy Roman Emperor, of Archduke Ferdinand. Peace be upon him, before they popped him to set off World War II. And then on your right, on your left is that. On your right is a statue. Somebody posted again, showing the fez outside on the woman who's sitting on the camel with the sun. You know what I'm saying? With the native braids, showing that the native woman of America was a Moor who wore a fez, who was sitting on a camel, but had the cross set up behind her, and had the Indian as a slave under her. So again, these are the descendants of Indian slaves. See the skull she's sitting on? That's the ancestors that paved the way for her to get where she at. This is why they had to destroy the black woman. And this is the fez of the rulers of the Holy Roman Empire, the Hanoverian dynasty, in so-called Europa. So where's this Christianity stuff come from? That all got put in there after the 1900s, because all of those people are Satanists. Meghan Markle, that can't, whatever that baby is, it can't be a real person. And even if it is, she couldn't give birth to it because that's a man. You know? And she's never claimed to be black or anything else. Because then if she's black, what are you? This is what's coming for them. And we are at the precipice of that, I believe. And all of the movies and everything are preparation for us to get ready and get right. And, you know, the paperwork and that stuff is just the physical representation of us going back to being he who sits above the table. Because, see, he who sits above the table, you know what I'm saying, dictates what happens. Therefore, as one who is the representation, as we Moors, as a people, you know what I'm saying, are the representation of Allah's will in terms of the destruction of that which is unalike. And when I say Allah, I'm not talking about necessarily a God. I'm talking about a force of truth, love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. We are the hand of God. And when you read the Bible, if you want to read that, or Quran, and when you talk about the hand of God, you're also talking about the hand of God that exists when us, the melanocytes, that which comes together under the ultra microscope, that looks like little hands holding each other, that absorbs all the ultramagnetic light for us to be able to activate the 6 chakras through our hands and to be able to manifest our deeds in the form of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. You understand? They showing these people more as science. They showing you what can happen when you do it, because the ultimate story was he did it. They tell you in the movie, he did exactly what he said he going to do. And that's what they don't like about Moors. That's what they don't like about men. That's why they want all men to be women. So that way we are indecisive. And I'm not trying to diss women saying women are indecisive. I'm saying women have the luxury of indecisiveness. Whereas men, we don't have that luxury. If I say I'm going to do something, I got to strive my best to do it. You're not expected to do so. Only necessarily when it comes to children. That's the only time you have an expectation to do that. Whereas me as a man, I have an expectation to do that, but either way, it has to be done. And that's the imbalance, you see, which creates the ability for us not to be able to shake hands and be together. But all of that is reminiscent, like I said, in us manifesting that ethereal power that we have through understanding our true self. This is the universe. This is what our brain looked like. This is the web of time. This is dark matter. This is real. This is what they're tapping into whenever they see you going into space and going into time warps and all of that is Hadrian Collider, CERN, worship. All of the imagery, all of that is high Freemasonry of these transgender, transvestite, whatever you want to call them, Satanists that are working these images to imprint in our mind to activate this. When you pop the internet up, it looked just like this because it's the same thing. It only exists really in our mind. But we haven't activated the point to be able to do it because we are missing the spiritual aspect of that. That's what this represents. So they got to show you the truth. So they got to make it look like this. But before it was this, it was this. You understand? This is a man's hand, but they put it in St. Teresa's to hide the fact that and make you think it's a woman's. But based on the position of the finger, then we know it's a man. So why are you saying it's a woman's hand? You see? And where's this jewel? Where are these jewels at? You see? As usual, Moors, we studied it out. We had jewels on the fingertips, at the knuckles, and we had the gauntlet bracelet. So again, Moors, this is the masonry that they got our peoples going through, and this is why Thanos, as a representation of the end of the ultimate triumph of Islam, has to be vilified and put into that, because essentially we think about the destruction of this world every day. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting a better society. But what I was trying to show with all of this culmination between the scissors and the rebel flag and all that, it's all the same thing. It's all us, them, knowing that we are the ones that are the true possessors of it, and they can't really own anything. So they got to keep us destitute and messed up, because in all of the records, we're the landowners. See? Look how big we are. Look how big we are. Look how small this nigga is, Pete. So when they say Montezuma was like 15, this is what they saying. Like, these people were huge. They had to be made small. They had to be broken. And thus, here we are. Anybody have any last questions before we close out? That's right. You go to a barber. And remember Barbar, the elephant with the crown that we used to read the stories when we was a little kid? And then you have to pass the bar, the barrister, right? Yeah, because back in the days, a barber was a surgeon. Get the book, uh, 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 Nature Knows No Color Line by J.A. Rogers, and get that book and read about Sake D. Mohammed, the one that brought the baths and the surgery up to England, taught them how to bathe and all of that. A good book on that is I put one on one of the joints. I held it up. I just don't remember the name right now. But any book on Latin that Prince Uriel Bey did, definitely, to start. Yeah, the barbers were the surgeons, the first doctors, because they were part of the Imhotep Brotherhood, because they were the high priests of Anu. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of these people are just, actors. They look like men, but they're really women. They look like women, they're really men. The Confederate flag is evil to most, but really symbolically a symbol of our usurpation and our fighting back and breaking it down. That's why they do that. They've turned us against our own selves. And because we think we know what's happening, we participate in its destruction. You know what I'm saying? So all we got to do is focus on our nationality and getting our situation straight, and your third eye is going to be able to make you just spot out the trannies and all that. Now you're just going to know, because that means anybody that work with these people day in day out got to be down with it somehow. If they not that, they got to be down with it. And the way that they keep it secret has to be Freemasonry, because that will be the only bond to keep somebody from having to get consolation from that. You see what I'm saying? The Congolese Africans, these are the guys that came over here with the Portuguese, with the Spanish, to take your land and rape and eat you and shit like that. Like, that's real. Like, that's not me making it up. And I'm not trying to disrespect African or Congolese people. I'm just saying that the term African, one, is not an African word, and two, the Africans have their own situations to deal with. You know what I'm saying? They have their own countries, but they've never really been outside of occupation. That's why whenever they came amongst us, or whenever we did business with them, we had to do heavy screenings, because they would send them people infected with diseases and smallpox and all of that, just to take our gold, just to take our money, just to take our women. You know what I'm saying? So by the time they have almost 100 years with the earthquake to flip what they flipped on everybody, kill all the giants, and then it's a wrap. Like, I'm gonna end off with this. I showed this in the other one, but I could show it again. Now, this is what it looked like to me. You can say what it looked like to you, but here go after the earthquake, the destruction of the giants. Here go one giant. See the head? Make it bigger. See the head? See the mouth? See the body? And here go another. Here go the nose. Here go the mouth. Here go the face. Boom. Then here go another. See the back. See this dude wrapped around him. Right? Then look. Look at the head. Look at the Olmec head. Look at the Olmec head. This in Kentucky, man. Look at the Olmec head. Boom. See? The dome, helmet. Look, here go. Look, this is the scale. So look how big these things are next to these people. Okay? Now look. Here go the Olmec head, boom. Then look at this dude sitting here in the chair. Look. Here's the face. Here's the legs. Here's the arms. Here's the legs. Here's the feet. Look, he's sitting in a big chair on a big ramp. It's a giant. See that? Look. They think we bullshit. What's this? What's this right here? What's that? It looked like an elephant. But then it don't. Look at how small the head is at the top. What the hell is that? Look also like a giant gorilla. But whatever it is, it ain't human. Do you see that? It also look like a giant, like minotaur, like a bear. I don't know what that is. But look how small it is to this dude. Look how small this dude is right here. Look how big this person is over here. Big this person is over here. Look how big these heads is down here. All these dead bodies. Look. These are peoples. These are our ancestors, man. Look. Look how big this dude's head is. Look. Here go the eye. Here go the nose. See? Look, here go another. Here go another. So what are they talking about? Somebody tell me what this is. So I know, well, that's giants, but what the hell is this? So again, these are pictures we've been seeing every day. We don't ask no questions. We just, oh, it's the 1800s. Yeah, that's when they redid everything. Look at all of the tents outside the house. This was somebody's house. This was their house. This was their house. Look how big the joint was. The columns. You see? It's a giant house. You see how far it went down? You don't see that because all this is blown up. But the house went all the way down. This is a giant house. They took it. This again, post 1811. New Madrid earthquake, 1811. There's no such thing as the Civil War. There's no such thing as the American Revolution. It's one big war, started in 1492 up to 1551. Then from 1551 to 1776, the amalgamators really took over. Then from 1776 to 1865 or 1867, the final frontier, where they just shut it down. Look, what's this? Who's this? What's this thing? Look at this square head thing, box head, with a chest, an arm, and some kind of loincloth. You see that? But we bugging. I'm bugging. I'm making this up. This conspiracy, right? That's what this is. Right? That's what they're saying. You might as well not tell me to believe my lying ass eyes. Look at this big skull. Look. Look. Look at the nose. The eye. Look right here. Look. Oh, that's just the shapes in the pictures. That's just whenever anybody that uses the word because, oh, this happened because, oh, that's because, they've already damned or cursed anything they say after that. That's what they don't know. That's what the white academics don't tell them when they learn proper grammatical English, because grammatical English is different than the King's English. And you see the owl head right here in the smoke lodge, the sweat lodge? Look. But we bugging. So this ain't a giant. So this person is the same size as this person. Okay. So yeah, Morris, that's what's going on. Anybody have any questions before we close out? Yeah, that's why I try to make it big so you really see, like, nah, this is what's really going on. These is real people. Look. Look how small that guy is. What is this? What is that? Okay. Who's this? Who's this dude? Who's this dude? You know what I'm saying? Who's that guy? Who's this? Right? Who's this? Oh, those are artifacts. Really? Then where they at? Yeah, they artifacts. Okay, cool. Where they at? Where they at today? I know y'all got them. Look, here go. This nigga look like the Joker. Look. Look how small. Look how small this dude is next to this thing. To this giant. Look at this thing. I'm making this up. I'm not bugging. This is what I'm seeing. This is what's really out here. Look, who's that? What's that? Yeah, so again, we're showing the interaction of giants and humans. Here go another one. See him? And they all black. Look at the lips. Look at the noses. They all Moors. They all melanated. All got Olmec helmets on. These white people, these Caucasian people, and these African imported immigrant people didn't build any of these buildings behind you that you see. Look the other more. Look like Martian Manhunter. Look at the nose, the eyebrow. Look at the big lips. That's why they make us hate our big lips and our big noses. Because we kept our foot on their neck for millennia before they was even here. The people who would be them, we was we was holding up. We was holding down. Like, just because we know one day you're gonna make these people. Here, look, here go the Olmec head. That's the one I was looking for. Let me close out. Look, that's the Olmec head. What are you talking about? In Kentucky, buddy. What are you talking about? So that's dirt? That's what y'all saying? It's a giant, humongous person is dirt? Somebody carved that? I don't even know. I don't even know where the picture come from. I don't know. But it's not manipulated. Somebody didn't go through and pixelate this. I'm just looking through the internet one day. Just different pictures of old stuff. And then I just noticed this giant sitting in the corner. Like, does nobody see this giant in the corner? This ain't a painting. So I'm just showing you the true history of the Moors. This is who we are, the real giants, the real monarchs of humanity, the people who sit above the high table is being put at the bottom, and it's our time to come up, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's what it is. I don't know at this point. Anybody have any last questions before we close out? That Muhammad II that we saw that was walking through with the heads thing, and the Muhammad II that took the head of this great Satan or whatever. This is here you go. So for all we know, this is in America somewhere. Just two. Because you got to remember, so everything that they talk about historically is whack. Everything that the prophet been talking about is true. So anybody pouting the narrative or parroting the narrative of what these people are talking about are going against what their ancestors actually was. Because these people that they claim it was barbarous tribes, and barbarous were Moors, and those Moors were connected to these Moors, and those Moors and these Moors were ancient to America through the ancient bloodline of the Tamil speakers, who eventually created all the known languages and parroted those languages throughout the world through the ancient Phoenician Empire, Carthaginian Empire, aka Numidian Empire, aka Old Al-Moroccan Empire, aka the descendant of the Old Atlantean Empire, given the authority to do that by the descendants of the ancient Canaanites and the so-called pharaohs or Paharus of ancient Far East, which was at the time Tartary. People by the Scythians who used picks to groom themselves. So again, this is it. You know, as far as I can understand it, so their ultimate history is going back to this, and ours is going back to the splendor. So the so-called parabellum, which again is a Latin word in the John Wick movie, which means to prepare for war, is all in correspondence to the actual snap, like I said, that is so prevalent in the movie when now Thanos, when I was growing up, I would never think Thanos was like a household name. Growing up reading comic books and stuff like that. Like, he was a nihilist who worshipped death and did all this other stuff. But then, growing up, you find later what these things really represent and why they're the villains and this like that. And then when you understand that every villain is really the hero of the story, and every hero of the story is actually the villain, that's why the heroes have to lie about who they are, and have to go around the law and have to do all these things. The villains just do what they want. You see? Because one is a national, one is a citizen. And the heroes are there to maintain the status quo. So they'd rather create divergent realities than go along with what they are left with because God happened. When you watch the movie and Infinity War, the last thing that Captain America says is, "My God." And then the next thing you see is Thanos walking towards the end of the of the hut, broke up, sat down, took a deep breath, and then allowed Allah, which is the sun, to appreciate his work. You understand? And then when they found him in the new movie, what did he say? They said, "Well, where's the stones?" After they cut his hand off, "Where's the stones at?" He said, "I destroyed them." He said, "Because after the work was done," meaning after I did what Allah told me to do, I destroyed them, because anything else would have been of vanity. You understand? That's why Thor had to cut his head off, because the head, cutting off the head, that's a he owed him that from the killing of the family and all that. But again, Thor represent the fiction. You see what I'm saying? So cutting the head off is what you do to the honorable enemy, like seppuku in the Bushido. You understand? So eventually, my summation of both movies is that Thanos was right. And I knew that back before, when I was reading it in the actual comic books. As a young Asiatic man, I understood his motivation perfectly. And it didn't want to make me kill myself or worship death or none of that. Because I looked at him and these other characters that represented that archetype as strong people. They might as well been, the elder and these people that was down the street. What I was seeing being men at the time. So now that they're trying to wipe men out, they got to try to create something like that. So the finality of us as a people is what they're trying to destroy. But they can't do it because it's already happened. So all we got to do, like I said, is get our houses and everything in order, inshallah, and we should be all right. And so anybody want to hit me up, you could do so at houseofel@hotmail.com. And, thank you guys for coming through and supporting, inshallah. And I hope you see the correlation between how they're trying to program us through these movies to go against the thing in ourselves that is actually representative of truth. That in the end, their Agenda 21 program has been about killing us from the beginning. So now, being that they have made a movie where they're trying to normalize the usage of that understanding, remember, this is all going back to the Guidestone thing that they've been pumping on everybody. So we got to understand what these symbols really mean. So we're not caught up talking about the wrong stuff and getting caught up in, the satanic and all that aspect of it. Like, yeah, that stuff exists in it, but people speak many languages. And we were called different things by different people. But it's what we call ourselves that matters, inshallah. So again, thank you guys for coming through to the Snapture. Thanos was right. And inshallah, we'll build on whatever you guys want to. If you guys have topics and stuff you'd like to build on, you could always email that to me as well. And I could try to bring that into the syllabus and things like that. All right. Peace. Nah, I saw that on the internet. Big up to whoever did it. CR, whoever that is. He owns the copyright to it. I don't know. I just saw it on the internet and it just really made a lot of sense. Peace.